So, recently, Gibson, in case anybody has not noticed, has come out with another channel on there for YouTube, and it is called the Gibson Gear Guide, and it is by far and away a pretty cool little site. It's kind of a complementary to the Gibson TV YouTube channel that they have, and it does give you some insight into their some different models that they're coming out with or that they do have, and it really is a very informative at times channel. And one of the things they came out with just recently, was a comparison of popular Gibson acoustic models. And in it, they brought out a Hummingbird, very similar to this one, a G-Rider, which was the representative of the Generation series. There was a J200, an LOO, and I thought there was one other one, but there was a few of them that, a J45, which they opened up with because, of course, it's their most popular most popular acoustic guitar that they sell, and that's cool. But it left me wondering why they didn't also talk about some of the other models that they sell, and so that's kind of where this one comes in. This will give you a slightly modified Hummingbird, because this is a prototype for a limited run color that was being made in the 2020 model year. So this guitar has been upgraded with 13 gauge strings, so it's going to have a little bit deeper tone on a couple of the low end stuff, and because of that I've actually turned the amp down to my mid on the acoustic amplifier, because all of these guitars have a pickup system of some sort built into them. The Hummingbird, the J-35, and the Dove all have LR bags setups, and then the G45 from the Generation series has a Fishman. Now, I believe the new G45s do have a LR bags as well, but the Fishman that's in the first generation G45, I think, comes out smelling like a rose, because I think it does really well for the walnut. Now, they've changed some things on the G45, so my G45 is a little bit different, and mine is running 10 gauge or 12 gauge Elixir strings, so it is the same size but different sound for the strings, mostly because of the fact that it's just the way the Elixirs are. Now, this guitar, again, the Hummingbird, does have a set of Elixir 13 gauge on it. So these are a little heavier, and they're not like drastically different tone, but it does give it a little bit richer tone in my world. In the real world, you can hear when you play this with 13s versus a 12, you can hear just a little bit different. The 12s tend to give it a little more undertone, and when we play the Dove, which does have 12s, you'll be able to hear that. But right now, these guitars all have the setups that they do that give them something special in the way the J-35 has different bracing. The Dove is a maple back and sides guitar versus the, I'm thinking that this particular Hummingbird is, there are some rosewood ones, but I believe that this particular one is a mahogany back and side one. So this one's going to have mahogany. The Dove is going to have maple back and sides. The G45 has walnut back and sides, and then I'm not exactly sure what the back of the J35 is. I'll look that up, and it'll be in the explanation of the guitar in the video. But like I say, the bracing of the J35 is different than the others, and so each of them gives a little something different. So I'm going to start off playing acoustically on the Hummingbird, because it's the one that is in the Gibson video. So this is kind of a continuation or a filler for other models that are inside the Gibson lineup that can be compared to each other. So here we go. Same riff with the LR bags turned on. Now, what we're using today is the Fender FA100 acoustic amplifier. So it's a designated acoustic electric amplifier. And it does a pretty good job of giving this one pretty good sound. Now, do I think that there's probably better amplifiers? Yeah, definitely. But if you're looking for a good acoustic electric amplifier, the Fender Acoustic 100 really is a pretty good amp. So, turn that back off. So, Hummingbird, it's an icon, and it will probably be an icon for a very long time. So let's talk about the guitar that is probably the Hummingbird's closest sibling, and that is the Dove. Now the Dove the Hummingbird came first. And that might be a little odd to some because if you don't know the history of Gibson, in the early 60s, the J series guitars and the jumbos really were the guitars that were in the lineup. And they had been in the lineup for a while. I mean, they were not new to anything that Gibson was doing. But the Hummingbird came first at 61 or 60, something like that. I think it was 60. And then shortly thereafter in 62 came the Dove. And the Dove was supposed to be the upscale from the Hummingbird. The Hummingbird had really, really, really nice appointments, but it was a plain player's grade guitar, and as fancy as some of them have been over the years, it has stayed true to its roots, and because of that has been the choice of several guitar players. Now, that said, the Dove came in with a different setup. It had a flamed back and sides, and it was made out of maple. And because of that, it gave a different tone. Now, we of course have a 63 Dove, but playing that one in this little comparison would not have been fair because number one, it is 60 years old. And number two, it is not electric. There is no pickup system in it. So this one does have the LR Bags VTC, I think, pickup system in it. So it's this pickup system and what's in the Hummingbird, basically the same setup. Now, this guitar is a couple of years newer. This one we got last year because it was kind of to celebrate the anniversary, the 60th birthday of our 63 Dove. So we tried to get one. I want to make sure I got one that was on par with the build quality and everything, because I didn't want to order a custom shop one, because the custom shop guitars are made to a higher standard, and the original 63 is just a regular old Gibson USA production from 1963. So what do you really gain? What do you really lose? That's why we do that. But anyway, bottom line, this guitar has rosewood fretboard, has maple back and sides, Sitka Spruce top, just like its older sibling, the Hummingbird. But they do have very different tones. This one is still running on the original Gibson strings, so it'll be due for some elixir soon. So it will probably stick with 12 gauge because we already have a 13 gauge strung Dove, so this one fills a different little point. Turn on the LR bags and Now the Dove, I have a soft spot for, and I don't know why Gibson didn't include this guitar, one of these guitars, in their video, because I think the Dove is the other iconic dreadnought that it is the iconic sibling to the Hummingbird. I just don't know why you would ever leave that off, but they did, and so let's see. So anyway, this guitar fills what I think is a massive void in that lineup, and I really do question why they didn't put one of these in that video, because the Dove gives a sound that is distinctively Dove, and the Hummingbird gives a sound that is distinctively Hummingbird. So if you're looking for something just a little bit brighter and a little more flashy, the Dove fits the bill. Now that said, it is more expensive. These guitars sticker for $4,700, $4,500, somewhere in there. This particular one did not cost that much because we got a smoking deal on it. But this guitar is indicative of exactly what you get from a Gibson Dove from the USA lineup today. And I love it. I think it has amazing sound. I might be biased. So it wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years max, that an inexpensive American-made Gibson acoustic was just unheard of. I mean, $2,000 buy-in was the deal. Now it is suddenly getting to a point where there's pretty substantial number of them between $1,000 and $1,600, and they're different models. They do different things, and each model has their own deal. The Generation series that we'll get to next is, or after this guitar, is one that is controversial. I like mine better, but we'll talk about that later. This one, though, is a part of the Faded series, and these guitars were added to the Gibson lineup in 22, I believe. So with that in mind, these guitars all have, the Faded series have a little less actual nitro on them, and they're a little more resonant because of that. Now, does that make them better? You got to make that decision on your own. But these guitars really do have a vocal sound all their own, and the Faded series guitars are unique. I'll just give it that. I like some of the appointments. I like the old school Gibson script. I like the way the guitar is built. I like this. I'm not a really big fan of the pickguard, but I am apparently in the minority on that because it apparently is a historic thing that I did not know until somebody pointed it out in one of my earlier videos. So I do like the tuners, though. They are cool, and I've always liked open gear tuners, but that's me. So at the end of the day, these guitars really are a good bargain, and they're less than $2,000 for most of them. This is the J-35, listed as like the 30s J-45, yeah, J-35 30s faded. So J-35 30s faded. So how does this sound? Now let's do it with the LR bag on. So this guitar has kind of a muted sound compared to the square shoulders, and the square shoulders just have more air inside them to move the music. So air inside these, the square shoulders come up where the slope shoulders do not. So they just have a little more full sound, and some people like that and some people don't. I'm one of the ones that really likes the square shoulder dreadnaught sound, though each of these guitars has its own place and does its own thing, and I like that. So I think the 30s J-35 really does have a spot in any lineup because of what it is. I think that it is a guitar that is affordable and durable and also pretty resonant playing acoustically because of how thin the finish is. I also think that an open G chord is the test of all acoustic guitars, but again, I might be biased. And for the final act, it's the Gibson G45 first generation model. Now, these guitars were absolutely a new thing and what kind of brought back affordable Gibson Montana made acoustics. Now, this is what we call the studio model, and it is the bare bones Fishman, whatever they call that element system or whatever that it is that they used. It is the least expensive growers that Gibson USA could put on. The neck and everything else. Mine has, as you can see, been played so much that it has started to get buffed into a gloss. But these guitars all came with every single part of them as a satin finish, much like the Faded series does. So the Generation series and the Faded series share that resonance because of how little actual nitro is on the guitar. This one has Sitka Spruce top with maple back and sides. I think it has a unique sound. I like the way that it sounds, and I am in love with how comfortable the neck profile is, as well as everything else about the guitar. This particular one, like I say, has been played enough that it really is becoming its own little entity. I mean, even the side of the fretboard, I don't know if I can make this pick it up, but on the side of the fretboard right here on the top, it is actually starting to get shiny from where my hand has reached around and played. So many times. But that said, these guitars are inexpensive. They are not top tier guitars. They are not the most amazing thing, but they are really good quality. And you know, Gibson took a lot of flack for the second generation G45 because what was it? Driftwood guitars, their channel took one apart and it turned out to be a disaster because it had squeeze out everywhere, and the purfling wasn't all the way to where it should have been. I mean, it just was a poorly made example. And when you look inside this guitar, you can look down, all the way down, and see not a drop of glue squeezed out anywhere. And I've taken an endoscope, well, actually not an endoscope, a mirror and a light, and looked all through this guitar, and I don't find anything like what Driftwood found. And I'm not thinking that Driftwood rigged it. I think Gibson had a bad day. Or maybe I got mine on a good day. Can't honestly say. But I will say this, these guitars, for the price, which was less than $1,000, $999, came with a hard shell case. You could get them when they were blowing them out for like $699 and $799, as they really didn't move in the first generation very well. So these studio models got really cheap, and now suddenly they're $1,100 used. So go figure. At the end of the day, though, this is what they sound like. Turn the Fishman on. Now let's do it again. Now comparing the Fishman to the LR backs is kind of like comparing a Cadillac to a Chevrolet. They both do the same thing, get you from point A to point B, but the Cadillac's definitely going to be more comfortable, and I feel like they have a really good representation of what the guitar sounds like. Now, I've never been able to get the I just never been able to get it dialed in to where I've never been able to get the Fishman dialed in like I can the LR bags. And maybe that's because I have more of the LR bags, but maybe not. It could just be that the Fishman doesn't do it as well. I like it. I think it makes the guitar flexible, but I would not choose it over an LR bags at all. So at the end of the day, I'm always going to come back to this guitar. I've got ties to the Dove, and there's just something about it that I can't get rid of in my head. So maybe I started off on a Dove. It's my dad's first guitar, or it's the first guitar that my dad owned when I started playing. First guitar I ever picked up. Maybe it's something else, but if you haven't looked at a Dove and compared it to the rest of them, you should, because they're pretty reasonably priced used. I mean, the same price as a Hummingbird. And I just like the way they sound. I just think they sound good. that note, see you next time.